Welcome everyone. It is now time to make dinner. It's roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and roasted broccoli tonight. So tonight we were lucky enough to find at the store a whole chicken. Actually found an organic one. So whole young chicken, air chilled, still within the date. $3 a pound, not too bad. So what we're gonna do here is get this ready to go to start. So the one problem that sometimes you run into when roasting chicken is you overcook the breast while you're waiting for the thigh meat to cook. So what we're gonna do to solve that problem tonight is spatchcock it. And when we're spatchcocking a chicken, we're basically flattening it out and allowing the thighs to be on the outside while the breast is in the middle, and then everything should cook pretty evenly. So here's a simple way we're going to spatchcock the chicken. I'm going to bring this down to our cutting board so you can see what we're doing. This is sometimes you get those knife sets and you see those kitchen shears and you basically only use it to open packages. The real purpose for kitchen shears is exactly what we're about to do here. So we're going to take our chicken, open the package up. Sometimes it has juice down at the bottom, so I don't like to have it run all over my cutting board. So what I'm gonna do is take it out of the package, open it up just a little bit more here, and then I'm gonna give it a quick rinse and pat with paper towels, and I'll be right back. All right, so here we are. We've rinsed our chicken. Some people like to brine it. For this application, I actually like an unbrined chicken. We're gonna take out all of the giblets that are usually stuffed in here into the cavity. Always check the neck area as well because sometimes they'll get lodged up in here. The other thing you might have, depending on who worked on the chicken, sometimes you'll find few pieces of feathers. These guys did a good job making sure that everything is off. So I'm just gonna pat it dry, make sure any of the excess water is off. And then here's the giblets. If you do like chicken livers, the hearts, kidneys, everything's in here. You're welcome to save it and use it for anything else. Unfortunately, no one in my family does, so I'm gonna set it off to the side here. And you can still see a few drops, so it's really important to make sure you get any of that excess water off. Just makes it a lot cleaner to work with. All right, so here's our whole bird. To spatchcock it, what we want to have happen is the breast sit side by side in the middle and the thighs on the outside. So if you have your chicken here, here's the spine that goes down right here, the breast underneath. So what we want to do is remove this spine. So you can actually kind of see, if you look at it this way, you can see along here, it's almost like a little guideline for you to cut along. So now I'll take these shears. It is going to take a little bit of force, and we want to go through and we want to remove the spine. So I'm going to start off here by cutting off any of the little connective tissue, and then I'm going to go right through. You might hear a few bones. That's where the spine connects to the ribs. That is totally fine to cut through. This is probably the toughest part right down here near the hip joint. I'm going to keep cutting through, and then I'll actually go to the other side and work it from this side. So I'm going to come right in here. I'm cutting the spine out. Right here is where you see that connection to the hip joint. If you just give it a little pull, it'll actually separate right there. I actually have a few pieces of organ too that'll come right off. So that cut is pretty clean right along the breastplate. And then here's your thigh meat and that joint. So we're gonna go the same way on the other side. This time I'm gonna start from the tail. Come right through. I'm gonna run into that joint. It's gonna be a little funky, so I'm actually gonna stop. I'm gonna flip the chicken around, go back from the neck. I'm gonna cut right down. See if you can see it from this side. You'll hear some of the ribs coming apart from that spine, totally fine to have. Now we're at that funky joint. I can just actually pull and it'll snap right off. Super easy. So I'll remove this. Now I don't want to throw this away because I'm actually going to use it to make my gravy. So what I'm going to do right now, before I get into anything else, since I have my scissors here, poultry shears, I'm going to try and cut this into a couple of pieces. Here's one. This is the harder one because it's down toward the bottom. And I'm going to throw them into a small saucepan, cover them with some water, and start it on the stove so I can make a gravy. The other thing I'm going to throw in is the neck that came with the chicken. Go right in. I'm going to wash my hands. All right, so now we have our filtered water. I'm going to pour some of it in, just enough to cover that spine and neck. I don't want to put too much in because I'm really trying to make a concentrated gravy here, and I'm going to put it on the back burner. Get it to boiling, and then I'll let it simmer. Put just a little bit more water in. It's a great way. You're using the entire bird here. All right, so I'm done with the poultry shears. At this point, I have a chicken with no back. So I know that the hardest part here is going to be getting through this breast. I'm actually gonna have to break it. I'm gonna go from the other side. The other thing is right here, I'm going to put a little score in. Not too much, just enough to kind of get me started. So I've used my knife. I'm now going to flip the chicken over. So you see we have the breast here, we have the thighs on the outside, and the wings we want to keep tucked in. But the problem here is the breast is sitting up pretty high. We want to flatten this out. So I'm going to take the breast, I'm actually going to break it apart, and then I'm going to give one little smash down. And now we have a flattened breast. The wings are going to tuck right in here. The thigh meat's on the outside, and this is how you spatchcock a chicken. So simple as that. That'll sit here. I'll get the next part of it ready. So I'm gonna go back, wash my hands one more time, and then I will be right back with you. All right, so hands are washed. I'm now gonna set this chicken and the knife that I used for the chicken on the board. I'm gonna put these back in the sink. Move this aside. I'm gonna bring in a new cutting board and show you part two. So now we have the spatchcock chicken. How are we gonna cook it? So what I'm going to do is get a mirepoix ready, which is celery, carrot, and onion. Just like I did, if you saw the vegetable stock I made yesterday, I'm going to leave the most of the skin here on the onion, so I'm not going to worry about anything other than going into probably 1/8, I think, for this application. Skin does get a little slippery. So I have one here. What I have is a mini roasting, or this is actually, I believe, a cake pan that I'm using, and I have the cooling racks. So we're using the baking stuff for a savory application here. So I'm taking the onion and gonna spread it all along the bottom of this pan. Because the pan is somewhat large, I'm actually gonna use a second onion. Leave a lot of the skin on. This is a smaller onion, so I may just go in 1/6 rather than 1/8. Kind of eyeball it and see. So here's my 1/6. That'll spread all along the bottom. Then if you were watching yesterday, you saw that I used the base of the celery in that vegetable stock. Here I'm going to use the stalks of the celery. And this will go all in the bottom of the pan. Even the leaves, everything goes in there. And then the last thing I'm going to use are some carrots. And these carrots, celery, and onions, kind of that traditional base to so much French cooking because it adds so much flavor to anything that's happening. And you'll see what we're about to do. So these have been rinsed, washed off, but I'm going to leave the peels on. So coarsely chopping these carrots, they're going to go in here as well. That was 3 of them. I'm eyeballing it. It's not getting as much coverage as I'd like, so I'll probably grab 2 more here. They'll go in as well. And so now we have our pan. It has celery, carrots, and onions in it. I'm going to now take my cooling racks that we use for baking, put them right on top of this. And there's a reason I used a pan with this depth, is because I'm going to now take that chicken and it will end up laying right on top. So before I do that, I'm going to season it well on the inside. Take some salt and a ramekin. Since I'm going to be touching chicken, I don't want to be going back to my same salt container over and over again. And then I'm going to do the same thing with pepper and ramekin. And this is just Morton's kosher salt and Costco Kirkland pepper. So I'm going to flip the chicken over. Salt pretty generously on the inside. And pepper. Flip it back over, and at this point I'm going to flip it right onto the mirepoix. It's going to sit right on top of this rack here. So you may see what I'm doing here. All of the drippings from the chicken are going to get caught in this pan, and it will drip right through our mirepoix. So we're going to make one heck of a flavorful dripping pan sauce that we can use for that gravy. So since I'm working out of this ramekin, I'm going to put more salt on and more pepper on. More salt here and more pepper here. This is the one thing, don't be shy with your salting. The last thing I'm going to do is untuck the wing and get the underside of the leg. Bit of pepper there and pepper here. But wait, there's more. So at this point, I'm going to wash my hands again. I'm not going to be touching the chicken after this. I'm just going to make sure I have it set up so that the thighs and the legs are on the outside, breast is on the inside, and then I'll be right back. Hands are washed again. Now we move on to other interesting components. At this point, you could put, I mean, we could go backwards and you could put any sort of rub that you might like on it and maybe not salt it as heavily. Personally, I'm very big on herbs, and especially I love thyme, and I love herbs de Provence, which has thyme in it. It's all the herbs you'd find in the Provence region in France, but it has this lavender component that's really interesting. Lavender, oregano, thyme, I believe sage is in there too. So I personally like to just throw a little bit into my hand and then sprinkle those herbs right on top of the chicken. So dried herbs, they work really well in stocks and soups. Usually in preparations like this, fresh herbs are something that you would want to steer toward. But with everything going on this last week or so, it's not the easiest thing to go to the store every day and get them, and we don't have an herb garden. So the other thing I do, so I have the herbs de Provence that I've just, let's put it this way, that I've just put on the chicken. I'm going to reinforce those with a little bit more thyme. So it's going to be a more thyme-forward seasoning here. So that is that. Now I have the last step here. I'm going to move this board that had the chicken on it. Put the caps back on these. So here is our chicken. Here's our vegetable board. I'm now going to add some unsalted butter. You can use oil, you can use butter. You really just want to have something that's going to help the skin brown. So I have the oven at 425. Yes, 425. If I was roasting the chicken whole, I might be at 350. But with this, since it's flat, I'm allowing air to come from underneath the chicken as well as on top. We can go to high heat to make sure this skin gets crispy. While that's happening, the back and the necks that have been boiling here are now going to be turned down to simmer. And I'm going to take this butter and apply some pats all over this chicken. There's some folks that like to stuff the skin underneath with butter. Not a bad thing, but for this, I'm just looking for that true chicken flavor and really trying to focus on the skin getting really crispy. So I think I'm pretty happy with this. So that's there. I'm going to set this butter off to the side, and now it's going to go into the oven. All right, so the chicken's in the oven, and now we get to work on the other component, which is getting the potatoes peeled. We're gonna leave the broccoli until the very end, but we're gonna get some water going for the potatoes, and then it'll do its thing, and then we'll come back to you in maybe half an hour. The chicken will almost be ready, and then we'll show you how we finish things up. So we'll work on the potatoes right now, but first, now that most of my knife work is done, cheers everyone. So lucky enough to find a 5-pound bag of russets. So we're gonna use them. General rule is 1 potato per person unless you really want to have a bunch of leftovers. No reason to do more than that. Some of these potatoes are pretty small though, so just depending on what your family's needs are, just eyeball it. I know a lot of folks just like to say, I'll just do the whole bag since it's here. But then you have to figure out how to repurpose those extra potatoes. So right now I still have 2 leftover potatoes. I'm gonna set them off to the side. I'm working with 6 potatoes. There's 5 of us eating, but a few little rinky-dink ones. So I'm gonna peel them, and then I'm gonna have a little bowl of ice water next to me, and then they'll go into my saucepan. I have our bowl with water here. I'm gonna get my vegetable peeler. Some of you have these peelers that have this little guy on there. And some people wonder, what is that for? Does it like for a keychain or anything? No, it's not. So in order to get the potatoes as white as possible, we want to get rid of the little eyes that come in there. So as I peel this potato, let me bring this down. As I peel this potato, even with peeling, it might sound silly, but you always want to peel away from yourself, not into yourself, because I have seen some gruesome injuries with potato peelers. And I mean, it's nice to go fast, but really safety's first and foremost with anything. So right here in this potato, you can see I already have something that I don't love, some of this brown spot, but rather than just peeling off the whole potato, I can actually use this little tool. All right, let's get rid of this guy here. Here we go, perfect example. So we have this guy. We don't want that to be part of our potatoes, so you just take this little piece right here, and you go right in, and I'm gonna try not to put it into my bowl of water, and you just pop the eye out. And when there's, sometimes it's just a little stubborn, and that's all right. You just keep working at it, and you end up taking that whole eye out rather than peeling away that much of the good potato. And you can even use it to scrape down that specific spot so that you're taking that out and leaving more of the good potato. But you can see how deep this dark spot went. Okay, now to this side, one more little dark spot. I'm going to use this eye tool and just kind of dig it out so that I just have that white, fleshy, creamy potato. A little bit more painstaking than you might think, but that end result is so much better and so much more visually appealing. So now I have that. I'm going to move my cuttings aside. I'm going to slice it, and I'm going to try and make kind of uniform pieces so that they cook at the same time. So I have my potato pieces, and they'll go into the cold water. So I'll do that with the remaining 6 potatoes. I will get them into a pot with water. I'm not going to have the water boiling when I put them in because I don't want the splash to come over and hurt me. So I'm going to have it maybe at that lukewarm. Salt the water pretty heavily. Let them go for about 20 minutes, and we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Bye.